My dear students, today we'll discuss design of rotors. So we know that there are two types of rotors. One is squirrel cage rotor, another is slip ring wound rotor. Slip ring wound rotor. So here this is squirrel cage induction rotor. Okay, so name squirrel cage has been used because this you can see here. This it looks like a square. It looks like a squirrel cage. So here you can see these are the end rings. Two end rings are there, and these are the bars. So these bars are shorted to the end rings. So usually these are made up of aluminium. So now here this is the rotor stack. So this is the iron material stacked together, and you can see number of slots here. Number of slots. So in these slots bars are embedded, and these bars are shorted to the end rings. This is one end ring. This is another end ring. Another end ring. And coming to the wound rotor, here winding is used. Instead of aluminum bar, here winding is used. So this winding is embedded in the slots. Okay, and windings are terminated at the slip ring. The difference between squirrel cage and wound rotor is that in the rotor winding we can add external resistance through these slip rings. So we know that to have a high starting torque, we should add resistance into the rotor. Our rotor resistance should be very high. So if you make if you manufacture rotor resistance in the high value, so it may give high starting torque, but at the same time it will lead to the high copper losses and poor efficiency. So in case of slip ring wound rotor, what they will do, during starting only they add external resistance. Once speed pickups with high starting torque, then this external resistance is removed. After that much of torque may not be required, then external resistance made zero. Then efficiency will be usually, because of this, efficiency will be very high. So here it contains winding. It is star connected, and you can see these windings are embedded in the slots. Okay, so now this you consider, you can see here, this is the stack of rotor core. So it is made up of thin laminated stampings. These are stacked. So this is the slot, and these are the tooths. These are the tooth. Okay, so here shaft is mounted here. Shaft is inserted in this. This is the hole for, this is the diameter of the shaft, and you can see these slots are inclined. Slots are inclined. This is called skewing. Here also you can see slots are inclined in this one. Here also you can see slots are inclined. Here also you can see slots are inclined. So that is called skewing. So what is the use of skewing? Why skewing is done? In future we are going to. Now coming to design of squirrel cage rotor. So first we will consider number of rotor slot. How to select the number of rotor slots. So proper number of rotor slots are to be selected in relation to the number of stator slots. Stator slots already we have calculated, we have found out. Otherwise, undesirable effects will be found at the starting of the motor. Proper number of rotor slots are to be selected in relation to the number of stator slots. Otherwise, undesirable effects will be found at the starting of the motor. So those undesirable effects are cogging and crawling. Cogging and crawling are the two phenomena which are observed due to wrong combination of the number of rotor and stator slots. In addition to this, induction motor may develop unpredictable hooks and curves in top speed characteristics, or motor may run with lot of noise. Now we'll see what do you mean by cogging. Cogging Fogging is nothing but in some cases where if the number of rotor slots are not proper in relation to the number of stator slots, then the machine refuses to run and remains stationary. Under such conditions, there will be a locking tendency between the rotor and stator. Such a phenomenon is called fogging. The motor fails to start here. So such a phenomenon is called fogging. Now coming to crawling, the seventh harmonics will produce a dip in torque speed characteristics at 1/7 of its normal speed as shown in torque speed characteristics below, and run the motor at 1/7 of its normal speed. That is, motor will run at lesser speed, which is called crawling. Now you can see here, this is the speed versus torque characteristics. This is the fundamental speed torque characteristics. This is the fundamental speed torque characteristics of any induction motor. Okay. So now, because of this harmonics, here you can see this is fifth harmonic, this is seventh harmonic. So because of this fifth and seventh harmonics, so you can see the impact on the torque. So now resultant torque will be this one. You can see here this is the resultant torque. This is the resultant torque. Okay. Now at this point you can see here this is the load torque. This curve is load torque. Okay. So torque produced by the motor should be more than this load torque. But at this point you can see here torque produced by the motor will be less than the load torque. So motor will not produce required amount of load torque at 1/7 of its because of this seventh harmonics. So because of that, motor will crawl at this speed. So motor will run at lesser speed. This is due to dips in the speed torque characteristics due to seventh harmonic torques and fifth harmonic torque. So this is now whatever we have discussed regarding crawling. It is with respect to seventh harmonic torques. Now, solution to overcome various issues of squirrel cage induction motor are: 1. To reduce harmonic torques, corded integral slot windings are used. Secondly, to reduce or even to eliminate motor noise and vibrations, fogging and synchronous curves, skewing of either stator slots or rotor slots is done. In the first slide, I have explained what do you mean by skewing. You are seeing skewing is done in rotor stacks. Now coming to the selection of number of rotor slots. So there are some guidelines to select number of rotor slots are: to avoid fogging, SS minus SR, this is SS is number of stator slots, should not be equal to, this is SS should not be equal to SR. SS should not be equal to SR means number of stator slots should not be equal to number of rotor slots. And to avoid crawling, SR should be 15 to 30%. SR should be 15 to 30% more or less than the stator slot. Next, in order to avoid magnetic logging, SS minus SR should not be equal to plus or minus 3 into P. P is the number of poles. And to avoid synchronous hooks and curves in torque speed characteristics, SS minus SR should not be equal to plus or minus P, or plus or minus 2P, or plus or minus 5P. To avoid noise and vibration, SR should not be odd. SR should not be odd. And SS minus SR should not be equal to plus or minus 1, and plus or minus 2, plus or minus P plus or minus 1 bracket complete, plus or minus into bracket P plus or minus 2 bracket complete. So these are the some guidelines to select the number of rotor slots. Summarizing, SS minus SR should not be equal to 0 plus or minus P plus or minus 2P plus or minus 3P plus or minus 5P plus or minus 1 plus or minus 2 plus or minus into bracket P plus or minus 1 plus or minus into bracket P plus or minus 2 bracket complete. So this combination should not be used. Generally, rotor slots are selected by using this equation. QS minus QR should be equal to plus or minus 1 or plus or minus 1 by 3 or plus or minus 2 by 3, where QS is equal to number of stator slots per pole per phase, QR number of rotor slots per pole per phase. Therefore, total number of rotor slots SR is equal. Now we'll see the design of rotor bars. So now how to calculate rotor bar current and area of the bar. Now current in each rotor bar IB is equal to 2M cos pi IPH KWS TPH divided by SR. SR is the number of rotor slots. So already we know what are the number of rotor slots. So substitute all these IPH, KWS, TPH, you can calculate IB. So where is the M in number of phases? SR is the number of rotor slots, KWS is stator winding factor. Now IB is equal to, substituting this M is equal to 3, okay, you will get 6 IPH, KWS, TPH divided by SR into cos pi. So now IB is equal to, substituting cos pi is equal to 0.85, 6 IPH, TPH divided by SR, for cos pi is equal to 0.85. So now take this SR this side. So SR into IB is equal to 0.85 times 6 PH IPH. So this will imply rotor MF, that is SR into IB, is equal to 0.85 times stator MMF. So left hand side, it represents this is the current and this is the SR, number of rotor slots, and that equal to rotor bars. So number of rotor bars, that is nothing but turns, rotor bar. This is MMF in the rotor side, MMF in the rotor side. So that's why it is called rotor MMF. And right hand side, it is 8.85 times. This is 6 PH IPH. This is stator MMF. So we can tell that rotor MMF is approximately equal to 0.85 times stator MMF. So the above relation may be interpreted as rotor MMF is about 85% of the stator MMF. Then to find area of each bar, AB is equal to IB by delta B. Delta B is the current density in the rotor bar. So it may be assumed to be 4 to 7 amps per mm square. This is how we can calculate IB, rotor bar current, and area of the rotor bar. To consider end ring design. So we know that all the rotor bars are short circuited by connecting them to the end rings at both the ends. Now you can see here, this is the end ring and this is the end ring. Now these are the bars. Okay. So now all the rotor bars are short circuited by connecting them to the end rings at both the ends. The rotating magnetic field produced will induce an EMF in the rotor bars, which will be sinusoidal over one pole pitch. The rotating magnetic field, initially rotor is stationary. When you give supply to the stator, a rotating magnetic field is produced in the air gap. So this will link with the rotor. So because of this, initially rotor is stationary. Because of this, EMF will be induced in the rotor bars. So this is sinusoidal in nature over the one pole pitch. As the rotor is short circuited body, there will be a current flow in the rotor bars and end rings because of this induced EMF. So because all the rotor bars are short circuited through the end rings, when EMF is induced, it will get a closed path. So because of that, current will flow in rotor bars as well as end rings. So now the distribution of current in bars and endings are shown in figure. Endings shown in figure. Referring to the figure, considering the bars under one pole pitch, half of the number of bars send the current in an end ring in one direction and other half in the reverse direction as shown in figure. See, this is the figure. This is the figure. Okay, this is one pole pitch. This is one pole pitch. Now you see, you can see half of the pole pitch is this. Now you can see current in the bars. Okay, these currents will flow. Half will be flowing in this direction, and other half this side the current will flow in the end direction in the other direction. So whatever the bar currents are there over one pole pitch, half of the bar currents will flow in one direction in the end ring, other half will be flowing in the other direction. Okay. Now you can see here this is the bar currents. So these bar currents are not same. Here the bar current is large, here it will bit less, again it is less, again it is less. Again it is here this side it is less like that. So now you can see the magnitude of the bar currents here. This is the magnitude of the bar currents over the one pole pitch. Now you can see the end ring current. This is the ring current. Now you can see here at this position, okay, at this position current is not there. Okay, at this position in end ring here, only this current is flowing. Only this current is flowing. At this position, these two currents are added. At this position, and three currents are added. At this position, four currents are added. Similarly, here one current is there. Here two currents are there. Here three currents are there. Here four currents are there. So now you can see here maximum current will be there. So maximum current you will find in the end ring at this position. So this is the end ring current waveform. This is the end ring current waveform. Okay, you can see here bar currents are maximum, where in that position the end ring current will be minimum, and where the bar current is minimum, end ring current is maximum. Okay, so now bar currents are not uniform. Okay, this you can see here with this diagram. Now for instance, okay, assuming if the maximum value of the current in each bar is IB max, but it is not true. We are assuming. Okay, we have seen that bar currents are not maximum in all the bars, and if the current is maximum in all the bars at the same time, then maximum value of current in the end ring, maximum value of current in the end ring is equal to IE max is equal to half into, because half of the number of rotor bars, half number of rotor bars divided by number of poles, rotor bars per pole. So this half is multiplied because half of the rotor bars constitute current in one direction, and multiplied by IB max, assuming that all the rotor bars are carrying IB max current. So this IE max is equal to, this is SR, number of rotor bars, into IB max divided by 2, this is, okay, divided by P. However, the current is not maximum in all the bars under one pole at the same time, but varies according to sine law. Hence, the maximum value of the current in the end ring is the average current of the half of the bars under one pole. Understood? However, because this one we have assumed, but actually the current is not maximum in all the bars under one pole at the same time, but varies according to sine law. Hence, the maximum value of the current in the end ring is the average of the current of the half of the bars under one pole. So that is the reason here maximum of value of the end ring we have to recalculate by multiplying this equation with the 2 by pi. 2 by pi. This will give the average value of this IB. Okay, this will convert IB max into actual values. IB max into actual values. Whatever the assumption we have done here, that is nullified by multiplying with 2 by pi. Now, the bar current varies sinusoidally. Therefore, IB max is equal to root 2 into IB. This IB is RMS. Root 2 into IB. IB max is equal to root 2 into IB RMS. Therefore, IE max is equal to 2 by pi SR. This IB max is substituted root 2 into IB by 2p. The ending current also varies sinusoidally. Therefore, RMS value of ending current is equal to this IE max by root 2. IE max by root 2. IE is equal to, this is in RMS. So, IE max by root 2. So, 1 by root 2 here, then 2 by pi SR into root 2 IB divided by 2p. So, this root 2 gets cancelled, 2 gets cancelled. Now, finally, we'll get SR into IB by pi p. So, this is how we can find out end ring current. End ring current IE is equal to SR into IB divided by pi p. After that, area of the end ring AE is equal to IE by delta E. So, delta E is the current density in end rings in terms of ampere per mm square. Also, we can find out the area of end ring is equal to depth of end ring multiplied by thickness of the end ring. That is dE into TE. Okay.